At my grandma's kitchen table, grief and growth sit together. Science and intuition and heart sit together. And today we're leaning more into the heart, into the intuition. When you lost somebody close to you or you've had a big life change, it feels hard to trust your intuition again. I've been there. What is anxiety? What is fear? What is grief? And what is actually my intuition talking to me? So today I am joined by Kaley Decker. She's an intuitive healer, a transformative guide who helps people reconnect with themselves after loss, burnout, and disconnect. And for my type A listener, busy moms, I know you're on here. You're gonna love this because she marries the intuition with the cerebral. She has a background in corporate America working with advertising, and now she does this. So she understands the load that we carry. In addition, she's also a busy mom too. Kaley, I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah. So tell me, what tea did you pick out?
I picked out an Earl Grey. Most importantly, it's decaffeinated.
Yeah.
I don't need any more caffeine today or I'm going to be like zooming up out of here.
That'd be fine too.
Yeah. So just keeping it simple, but have to have a little honey. Little sweetness in there. Yeah. What about you?
I chose the hibiscus because mainly, well, first off, I love the color because it's hot pink. But it feels really refreshing on the spring day.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, willing spring to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So we met because I am still very much in the middle of a big grief episode. It hasn't been even a year and a half, and I'm still reckoning with the loss of my mom. And what I've come to learn through you is that grief doesn't just live in my brain. It lives in my body too. So before we jump into that, give people a little bit about your story and your background and how you came to this work.
Yeah. It's actually been a process for me too, just preparing for this episode and knowing we were going to talk. And I've had to move through layers of grief that are very multifaceted. And as I've really looked into the energy of grief, and as we'll get into, I work a lot with the energy of things. And so to me, it's more connecting with the energy of grief as it lives in me, around me. And it's not a new thing. For me, I actually have firsthand experience with deep grief from a very young age. And I noticed that looking back at my childhood, I knew grief more than I knew love in some ways, but I didn't know the name of it. And so it was just really painful love. It hurt so bad to love so big. And there were different opportunities in my experience to kind of be hardened by that kind of pain of love. My mom she struggled with addiction. And so I was a child of an addict, and she struggled through that most, if not all, of my childhood up until after college. And I was the oldest of our siblings. And so for me, it was living with a mom that I lost, this kind of mother figure, and wanting to love her enough for her to choose us
Choose
over
yourself too.
Exactly. But as a child, I didn't feel strong enough or influential enough to influence her to choose us. And so that was my first kind of experience with a different type of grief. I hadn't lost her physically, but I didn't have her emotionally, spiritually. She wasn't present. And that required my heart to look in other places. And luckily, her mom, Susie, who I called Nanny, she tried to convince me a couple times to call her Grandmama because she was so like fancy and had this just air to her that I just adored. But she really was my person. When I look at my childhood, my nanny was my everything. I looked to her for peace, for solution, for resolution. And even much so that in high school, I actually lived with her all through high school. So she was really like my mom. I still have my mom, but Nanny acted like my mom. She was my rock. She was my foundation. And she
filled the gap.
She filled the gap, and she actually helped me feel held in a very unsafe environment. And so my heart really put a lot of pressure on that role of nanny filling. And I even think about, she lived in Florida and we lived in Georgia. And she would fly in, once or twice a month to come in and kind of help keep us moving. And when my mom was struggling, she would come in and kind of play the role of mom for us and keep us getting to school on time and just make sure we have food on the table. And I remember being, somewhat like 5 or 8. And I just looked up at her and I was like, Nanny, how am I ever going to survive it when you're gone? Even as a 5 to 8-year-old, feeling that immense love and already projecting what it was going to feel like
loss.
When I was going to lose her. And so to me, I've always been preparing myself for loss since a very young age. And as a highly sensitive person, as this empath that now as an adult, I've learned language to help me understand my feeling heart. I'm a deep feeler. A lot of kids are deeply feeling children. Some of us feel that loss more magnificently, that it almost feels like it could take us under. And a lot of times as children, we aren't given the language or the nurturing or the guidance. And for me, what that translated into was shutting off my heart. So I remember I would almost anxiously anticipate, okay, Nanny, how many more days until you're leaving to go back to Florida? 3 days, Kaley. All right, so in my body, in my heart, I decided, okay, I'm gonna detach from Nanny. I'm gonna stop telling her I love her as much. I'm gonna stop giving her hugs and kisses, and I'm gonna prepare myself for her to go back to Florida. And then I have to kind of put my armor back on so that I can survive this life that we have here that feels somewhat unsafe. Now, there was a lot of love in my home, even still, but it just wasn't a super stable environment. It wasn't consistent. It didn't feel consistently safe and nurturing. I really had to be the parent in a lot of situations. And then I fast forward to that, and well, actually rewind real quick. My nanny, I remember her answer to me was, well, Kaley, when you lose me, you're most likely going to be a parent and you're going to have to be strong for your children. Well, I had anticipated in my mind, well, my nanny's going to defy all odds and live until she's 99. And fast forward to 2014, on another coin of loss, I lost my first pregnancy. And so that was very traumatic, and there was grief there. And then at the same time, my nanny started declining pretty rapidly. And I didn't really know how to grapple with both happening at the same time. Before Nanny passed away, my daughter Chloe, who's now 10, I was able to tell my nanny that Chloe was going to be born on, well, her due date was November 20th, but she was born on November 21st, 2015, and that Chloe would have her name, Chloe Suzanne, after her. And, Nanny passed away right before Chloe was born. And I actually mustered up enough strength, because it felt so important to me, to stand up pregnant with Chloe in my belly to deliver Nanny's eulogy at her funeral. And what I called on was that strength for my child, who at that time was in the womb, you know. And I find that experience, in addition to motherhood grief, so I've known grief my whole life and the different facets of it, and really learning how to coexist with it and how to let it not shut me down. And adulthood and mothering has presented more opportunity to know that even more fully, because I've lost 3 pregnancies. And, you know, those were very deeply, they were very sad. It was very deeply painful for me. And then the second and the third pregnancies, my children were around and they were watching me and they were grieving. And so then it becomes grief as, how does the family grieve? How are we modeling grief for our children?
Which is something I've really been so conscious of, walking this road with my son.
It is. And it's how do we as our human coexist with this duality of living here on earth, and also guide our children while we're in pain and also trying to grow and make something beautiful from it. And so I look at that whole journey for me and this deeply feeling heart that felt so much pain when I was little, just preparing for loss. Everything kind of felt so jolting when we had to move every year, or when my mom would be in and out of rehab. You know, there was so many opportunities for me to feel different variations of grief.
Even just, I think, I'm just imagining like the school disruption.
Right.
Not having just kind of the normal like birthday parties and sleepovers and the normal cadence that I know you and I work so hard for our children to have. You did not have.
Well, exactly. And I think as a mother, it also brings up how do I mother in a different way?
Yeah.
Where we're evolving and changing generational patterns, which is to me going to be a big topic of today when we think about partnering with our past loved ones to change generational patterns, to bring in new ways of being in this world that's more connected to the heart. But, you know, that was a really big lesson for me, and also being able to open my heart back up to love, to trust love, to trust life, you know? And so that journey all pointed back to this deeply feeling heart that I had as a child, where I could sense how everybody was feeling in the room. And these were all clues to the person that I am now, and the focus that I have on the heart, me healing my heart, me helping heal other people's hearts. So in a way, I'm very grateful to grief. And that seems so weird to say, because it can hurt so bad when you're in grief. But in a way, it becomes this blessing, or this kind of gateway, this pathway to a deeper feeling of being here and being able to love at a deeper, wider capacity.
Yeah, like that richness of life. It reminds me, so one of my favorite podcasts and interviews I listen to probably at least once a month is, there's a podcast, Anderson Cooper, All There Is. I actually didn't know about it until after I'd started mine, but there's an interview he does with Stephen Colbert. And I don't know if you know Stephen Colbert's story, but he lost his dad and at least one brother, maybe 2. And if I get this wrong, I'm so sorry. But the thing that I always walk away with in that episode is there's a quote in there where Stephen says, "Can I learn to love the thing that I most wish didn't happen?" And he said, and like, that's life, right? Is like learning how to navigate that, and how do I show up in this world to be compassionate and to be a good father and to be a good husband. And I listened to that episode so many times because it's an amazing episode, but there's so much wisdom, I think, about you have this hard thing, whether it's divorce or pregnancy loss or hard childhood, or I think we all have a mixed bag, right?
A season of life that we're grieving.
Yes. But then how do you take this bundle of like garbage that seems supremely unfair and learn how to love it, but then also love yourself, and then have it almost have the image I'm seeing is like a pair of glasses that you look at the world through because of this now. Not rose-colored glasses, because that's toxic positivity, but your world's just colored now differently.
Yeah, I love that.
So tell me, you were working in corporate America. I know your story, but tell the listeners what happened. Like, what was the big shift?
All along this time of deciding that I was ready to have a child, and I had checked all the boxes, and I was like, okay, I want to get to this certain point in my career before I'm ready to have a child. All right, I'm ready. We get pregnant. We lose the pregnancy. It was heartbreaking, physically hard to move through, emotionally hard, spiritually hard. The doctor, of course, being like, well, it doesn't help that you're under so much stress in your job, right? So kind of thinking about the background that I come from, I poured my everything, my identity, everything that I was, everything that I had into this job, this career, because I was going to make something of myself, and I was going to be financially independent, and I was going to create a different life and leave that one behind. And so it's so funny, up until a year ago, I actually didn't start my story until after my career in advertising. So if people would ask me, tell me about yourself, my story began when I was in my 20s, and I just kind of shoved everything else behind. And that's important here because I started this career and I was very successful. I climbed the corporate ladder. I did everything that I never dreamed of being able to do when I was younger. I didn't ever think that I would amount to anything. I felt so terrible about myself when I was a little girl.
Makes
never
me
going
so
to amount
sad
to
for
anything.
little Kaley.
And I've done so much work around this. And then here I was, even with this terrible inner critic inside that really didn't like herself or believe in herself. I built this like 6-figure career. I'm like, okay, if I can do that when I'm not feeling great about who I am, imagine what I can do when I'm feeling great about who I am. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was really what my task was. So what was so cool about this is that my nanny, I had Chloe. I really didn't want to go back to work after maternity leave, but I made myself. I was really feeling torn. I wasn't really listening to my intuition. I was more listening to what I should do. I need to be strong. I need to
everybody does this. What's wrong with me?
On me. Yeah, like what's wrong with me? And so I went back.
That feels familiar.
And, so my backfill was supposed to be this woman that ended up working with me on my team. And I found out, this was a God wink from Nanny, that she was a medium. And she was upstairs on the second floor of the advertising agency that I was working with when I went back. And as soon as I heard that somebody told me that she was a medium, I messaged her and I said, we have to meet. Like, I had probably been triple booked. I didn't care. I was like, whatever we've got to do, I need to meet with you. When can you meet? I will clear my schedule. And the agency had these phone booths on the second floor, and we met in a phone booth. And my nanny came through to her. And I was really struggling with this this tug of war inside, where I really felt connected and I wanted to have a career, and I was very proud of it, and I liked it.
And
I liked
hard
the
for
people.
it.
Like, I loved the people. I still talk to all the people. And yet at the same time, I had this little baby that I had just been dreaming of having, and I wanted to be a present mom for her. And that tug of war almost broke me. I was having anxiety attacks. I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I was really afraid of making this jump that my heart was telling me so clearly, Kaley, it's an easy answer. I even look back at my dad's like, I can't believe that you were struggling with that decision. You were like calling me from the bathroom crying. Like, it was so obvious that you just needed to quit. But it was so hard because I had worked so hard to build up this identity, and I was worried about would I grieve it when I left. So there again, I'm preparing myself for grieving this identity that I had built. Who was I without this job? And if I'm a mom, you know, what the unknown kind of terrified me. Well, Nanny came through with flying colors. This medium, she's a dear friend. Her name is Lee, and she basically brought Nanny through. And it was so obvious, and much like now I do in sessions where the way she spoke was like Nanny, and Nanny said, you will know your true power on the other side of this leap of faith. This place is great. You've done a great job. This is not your mission. And she didn't say much else. She said, you will know your true power on the other side of this leap of faith. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but it sent me on a journey of healing and discovering through Nanny's help and giving me that strength and that belief, cheering me on and kind of giving me this golden nugget of this power that I was to find in myself. And that is to me, the first start of what led me to the work I'm doing now, which I can't do enough of. You know, I'm so passionate about it, and I'm so grateful to it. You know, I think that me being able to have permission to seek Lee out through my nanny, you know, her modeling that for me, saying, hey, it's okay. It's okay to believe in this thing that a lot of people might not want to, or might not think it's real, or might have certain things to say. And it gave me permission to believe it. And I felt her. You know, I felt her. I knew there was something beyond the mind, the body, my heart, my intuition, everything was telling me. And that was all I needed to hear. I put my notice in shortly thereafter, and it wasn't the easiest journey, but oh my gosh, was it the most fruitful one? It's the most heart-aligned one, is the most freeing one, you know? And so being able to learn that our true power lies on the other side of some of these courageous leaps, and to be as courageous to meet grief where it needs to be met, you know? And it's so interesting because a lot of times before a session, couple days, you know, I might get woken up in the middle of the night to get a download for this person, or I might be given a message or how I need to help heal them, or a past loved one might come through. And the last couple of nights I've been woken up with messages from grief itself, and being taught grief kind of from a different vantage point. And then even so much that Nanny came through and gave me a healing in the middle of the night. And it sounds so crazy, but it's like, as we work through these different layers of grief, like even knowing that I'm coming on to this podcast to talk about this topic, there was another layer for me to face so that I could meet grief with more vulnerability, with a softer, more open heart. Because, you know, I feel like sometimes grief and being tough and strong can harden our hearts, and what we're being asked to do is more soften and open, and to connect with a more transcendent version of who we are and who that person that we've lost is now.
Yeah. Because I think we each have a choice, right? Can we become more open, or can we become more hardened? And if you become more hardened, I think that that's where the disconnection from your loved one takes place. This idea that's coming to mind when you were talking about your grandmother flying in, I got this picture, and I don't know if you know a lot about P.L. Travers, who wrote Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
But it was based on the fact that her grandmother would come in and take care of her. And and in Mary Poppins, she shows up, she flies in on the umbrella. And then you fast forward and they took this beautiful story, the beloved movie, and they made Mary Poppins Returns. And there's this beautiful song in there called Where the Lost Things Go. And the lyrics of it, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote it, but is that, nothing's ever lost. Real love is never lost. And so if you choose the path of hardening, which you absolutely can do,
Right.
then you will be lost and you will be disconnected. But if you're open to the idea, very much like the church teaches, regardless of what church, the mystical faith, that we're coming out of the Easter season of, the sacrament of the body and the blood, and like, it's all the same. And they aren't opposite ideas. They actually very much live together.
Absolutely. I think that there's this idea that grief almost becomes a project for our human to...
Oh yeah, I was going to guru myself out of it.
To hack, to find a hack to be able to... And it's so real and honest and natural for our human to want to do that. And I think sometimes what happens is if we're just relying on our humanness to solve grief, quote unquote, solve grief, we're kind of missing the opportunity for grief to evolve us and for us to also help the soul that's passed evolve. And what's so interesting is when I was woken up in the middle of the night, grief kind of sits there and it says, let me hold you. Grief is not something that wants you to run away from it or solve it. There's not a specific timetable for you to be able to move through the stages. Grief is love personified. Grief is the embodiment of love. When love says, I know you're heartbroken, let me hold you. And so I find that when we think about grief being this separate thing or concept that lives in the mind outside of the body or the heart, that we're only going part of the way, where our ancestors, our past loved ones actually want to put their hand down and hold us while we move through a more transcendent form where we can access our eternal nature through this body in this lifetime. And that's what really the soul came here to do.
Yeah, because this body is just a container.
Right? And so then it becomes this beautiful journey in learning how to live without the physical, tangible feeling of that person, and to that word acceptance, to accept radically, sacredly, that loss is a part of this life here on earth, that as a soul we chose that, and that this person that we're grieving, this pet that we're grieving, whatever that may be, it's so valid and normal to grieve and to feel that pain, but take it further than your humanness so that you can use it as a portal, as that pathway to your transcendence, to your intuition, to more bliss, more flow, more joy, to join arms with that past loved one in more of an ethereal kind of, more of that esoteric sense, in your imagination. For some of us, it might feel easier to just imagine, but they want to be along for the ride.
Yeah.
They want to be along for the ride.
What's so interesting and is that, I was going to guru my way out of grief.
Oh, yeah.
I had, being the smart woman, I was going to find the books and the podcasts, and I was going to do all the things, and then I'm going to be fine. Right. And then I pretty much reached the end of the internet because being an attorney, I'm a real good researcher. And there was nothing that like some felt good, some felt not, some resonated, some didn't. But I was like, where is the thing I need?
Yeah.
Where is the thing for just the average mom? And it was in one of those quiet moments where my mom, I really feel like, gave me this idea for this podcast and said, let's do this.
Yeah.
And I remember I wrote down, I have no idea what I'm doing. And she was like, that's the point. Show them.
Yeah.
And so that idea of like partnering, I really do feel like this show, every episode is her sitting here with us.
I saw that coming in, and I even invited Nanny in, and I imagine Nanny, before I came into the house, calling her in and just imagining, like, I want you to sit next to me and I want you to hold my hand.
Yeah.
My nanny had these arthritic hands, and they were really knobby, and it gave them some weight. And they were so comforting. And so that's one of the things that I miss so much. Like, I would give anything to hold Nanny's hand in the physical again. Anything. And there's not 1 second of any day that Nanny's not with me or I'm not thinking about her. Literally. She's constantly with me. And I'm also constantly at some level wishing she was still here in the flesh. And so how do I allow myself to honor that reality? Because I don't want to wish that feeling away.
Yeah.
And also, and allow that to move me. She's almost saying now, to greener pastures. It's like there is this sweetness to being able to accept that grief sits with us. And that's what I thought was so powerful about looking at the energy of grief. And it's saying, I want to hold you. And it being in the heart space, and it's saying, I want to hold you. Like, come into me. Let me hold you. And then as you allow yourself to kind of surrender to it, and instead of it feeling like it's a wet blanket on your body where it's really restrictive and heavy and it's
something to run
wanting
away
to take
from
you under,
yeah.
It's impossible and improbable that I'm ever going to survive another day, which grief, we feel so deeply that pain that it almost feels like, how can I continue onward? And yet we do. And I had listened to this concept of grief is love that has nowhere to land, and it just didn't sit with me fully. Like, yes, that's true in my humanness, but then it kind of leaves me hanging. Like, I'm still
like,
raw
so what?
and
What
open.
am I supposed
like,
to
all
do?
right, well, what am I supposed to
Now
do
what?
about it? And that's what I thought was so powerful, is this is the answer that, well, actually where it's meant to land is in your loving heart. Grief is love personified. And that if we come into grief through an open heart and we let it hold us, we kind of turn into it. Love is surrounding it, and that's where we draw our strength from. And even on the way over here, I was getting this idea that centrifugal force, like when you are making a left-hand turn and the car's going to turn, you're turning left, you can sense the feeling of the turn, yet your body is feeling like it still wants to move forward. So the metaphor is almost like love is this centrifugal force that's holding us in our center, and the grief is sometimes that motion, that movement, that force that feels like it's going to take us away from our center and it spirals us out of control. But love is the anchor inside of our heart to be able to hold us.
So let's talk about when you're getting ready to what an energy healing session is, because Ryan's very logical, cerebral brain was like, I don't know about this. And even you told me when we were finished, don't sit too much with the what if. Just like let it be and let it be. I don't even know what you said because I was so like, what has just happened, right? But I want you to share for the listeners, because this reel I put out got a lot of, and it was actually, I had created it the day before we had our session, and I just held it. I didn't put it up initially because I was like, I don't know what people will think about this. And it was about the wisteria vine out back. And my husband knew about the wisteria vine, but nobody else did. But tell me about how that came to you prior to us even meeting, and then how that, like, tell them that story. I want them to hear. Because
Yeah,
it was
so
so, like, something only me and my husband and my son knew.
So I remember I was actually cleaning up. There's an apartment in our basement that leads to our studio. And I was cleaning it up, and from something my daughter did, like a pre-K camp that she wanted to put on. And I was cleaning it up, and all of a sudden, so I'm just cleaning and picking up toys, so very like practical life, and trying to get it looking nice for you to come in so it doesn't feel overwhelming. And all of a sudden, I hear the word flowers, and I see the visual of flowers, of garden. And then I kind of get to the point where I see wisteria, and they'll show me in my mind's eye. It's like a picture, but a picture through a feeling that I get. And then they'll show me kind of energy around that. So then I dig a little bit deeper and I open myself up, and I'm like, okay, I think that this is a message connected to this client coming in. And so then they'll start telling me more. So this specifically was your mom coming in with the message that she really wanted to be a part of the session. And then also the signs, the symbols, the synchronicities that give the client, my client, proof. It's almost like proof of the pudding, right? Like proof of the pudding, so to speak, that this is real. That, oh my gosh, how would this person who has never met me, who's never really spoken to me, we had one short intro conversation, know about this? And those are the things that I think our mind need to hear, so that the mind doesn't push away the possibility of this connection being real. Because at the soul level, that's what we're yearning for. We're yearning for that connection. We're yearning for that knowing that this person that we miss so much is with us, is able to see us. There's so many examples of this, but with yours, it really was. And it comes in subtly, it's like an entry point for me. And then once my client comes into the session, we dig in deeper and it expands. So first it's kind of setting up the proof, essentially, that, okay, she really does know, she really is connecting with this person. Because of certain things that I say, the way that I say them, my mannerisms sometimes change. And again, my mind, even in my human, is like trying to understand it. And this is just something that's beyond, our ability to understand it with the mind. And then to be able to move the person from a state of despair, of feeling lost, even, when I think about people feeling burnt out, so not maybe connected to grief, but just the level of stress that our systems are under, being able to shift somebody's state, like create a state change for somebody in the body and the nervous system. So this is where it starts shifting and becoming a little bit more practical, because we're not only talking at the spiritual level. I'm in service to this person that's still here grieving. The person that has passed is in peace.
Right.
They're feeling really good. Now they want to be a witness, and they want to often come in and say, I see you. I know that this is hard. I love you. I'm sorry that this happened. And then also a lot of times they want to own anything that they did to bring any level of unconditional love or dimming of the light to that person. So there's always this shift from being this more like proof through the signs and the synchronicities and the phrasing of a session, and then being able to move into healing the person that's needing it. And then me being able to be that open channel, that vessel, to bring whatever that specific soul needs to the table to be able to help them to feel better.
So how do you differentiate for yourself and for your clients are there any coincidences, or how do you, because I know, sometimes I think, well, was that a sign or was that a coincidence?
Yeah.
How do you intuitively know what is a sign, what is meant for me, what is a message that a loved one is trying to connect with me over versus, I don't know what the name of it is, but that psychological phenomenon where you're like, I think I'm going to start looking for a car, and you're looking for this specific
you're almost
car, and
manifesting it because
right, and then all of a sudden you start seeing this car everywhere, right? And so how do you how does one tell the difference? If somebody's listening and they're like, I really feel like I'm getting these nudges from from the other side, from my loved ones, from God, from spirit, whatever language they use. How do they tell the difference between that and just mere coincidence? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, and it is nuanced. It requires a level of belief and openness, and trust that you're really tuning in to something that is true. That to me happens at a body level. We can feel that truth, that knowing inside. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that is so deep and peaceful at the same time. And so a lot of times what I try to help coach people through is how to attune their body to their wisdom, to their intuition. How do we remove fear? If we're getting any fearful messages, or if we're afraid that we can't connect, or if we're operating or going into this with any sensations of fear, or disbelief, a lot of times that's what can kind of present itself inside the body. And so to me, it's really attuning your body vessel, your heart space, to trust your intuition again. It's to trust. And then through the trusting and the following, you light up differently when you know it's true. You light up. It's a feeling. And that's what I wish I could put it in a bottle, like bottle it up. That's what I keep trying to tell people. Like, I wish I could.
This is the checklist of when you know.
But you just, and for each person, it's so different.
Yeah. I think what you said that resonates so deeply is, especially in 2026, and what I tried to do, guruing myself out of my grief, I was looking to all these external factors to move this along, to check the box, to get over it, to make myself feel better. But truly, even when I was a little girl playing television, like for me, even before my mom passing, there were things, whether it was taking a job, going out on the first date with my husband or whatever, it was such a knowing, like, I know my hair is brown.
Yeah.
Like, it was that, like, oh yes, okay, yes, this.
Right.
And there was just never, almost like the first time I held my son, oh, I know you.
Right.
Like, just that calm, no anxiety with it. And that might not be true for everybody listening, but just truly, water is wet. Like, just that.
Right. That's clear.
Yes. And that, for me, that's how it feels. So before I let you go, I always ask my guests 5 questions, rapid fire. You don't have to spend a lot of time. So if you're giving us one life lesson from Nanny, what are we learning today from her?
Oh my gosh.
Because you've already told us so much, but one phrase or something she used to say
she called me sweet thing. Mm-hmm. And she just wants us to believe in ourselves. Step into your power, believe in yourself, and step into your power.
Yeah.
Stop dimming your light.
Yeah. Step
into your power. All the things that you're knowing that you want to go after or do them now. Step into your power, into your light. Believe in yourself. It's all tied together.
That is such a message for every person who listens to this.
It's move. It's start to shift that energy.
Yeah.
Don't stay stuck. She stayed stuck. She was stuck. And part of what she wants to do is help people move forward and up and into their mission and their purpose.
I love that. So when life's gotten really loud, what is one small thing that feels comforting that helps you move on, that kind of helps you get out of that stuck space?
Oh my gosh. Other than just going and snuggling my youngest son, Bodie, who is like the most comfortable. When he was a baby, I would call him like selenite. So if you're familiar with crystals, he's just like very calming and loving. But for me, it's just breath. There's so much power, especially when it comes to working professionals, busy moms, anybody who is in overwhelm or the stress spiral of life, I call it. It is staying connected to your breath. 30 seconds of deep breathing, allowing yourself the gift of your breath, can reduce our cortisol by up to 20%, if not more. And so that's that piece. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll take it one step forward and I'll kind of go into myself. Like I'll be in the carpool lane and I'll do my breathing. And then I just need kind of a break from human life. And I'll kind of go into a space where I connect with my heart. It's almost like a cave, but it's like a safe space inside where I just kind of give myself a little bit of a respite from humaning.
Yeah.
Humaning can be hard for me sometimes as such a sensitive person. So
yeah, I get that. What is the one thing in your house that's really sentimental that you just, if something happens outside of the kids and the pets and the husband, like you say, I'm taking this with me?
Oh my gosh. Well, sadly, you want to know, other than my nanny's jewelry, which I'm wearing one of her bracelets today. So her jewelry, and then she had this beautiful ceramic lamp with swans. So she had these beautiful swans. And my son, my little wrecking ball son, who is also selenite, but he's also fire, he broke it and broke into hundreds of pieces. I couldn't repair it. And so I actually so that taught me a lesson in attachment to things. So it's more of this feeling, home is where the heart is, that I've had to really practice. But then I think about these silly swans that I found at a local flower market, and my husband got them for me for Christmas. I'd probably grab these swan planters because they remind me of Nanny's swan lamp. And she was just she had the best taste. And I'm like, I would be making everybody grab those, I
love that. If you're asking God, Spirit, one question and you're getting an answer, what is it? It doesn't have to be a big question. It could be just for today.
The biggest question that I find myself is, how can I get back to the present moment?
And I know we have taken so much time, but it's just a thought that I want to share, is that we had one of those moments, my son and I, and he was asking, how old will you be when I am your age, which is 46? And I said, well, I will be 82. And he goes, that's really old. And I said, yeah. And he said, but you're still going to be here, right? And I said, yeah, I take really good care of myself, based on, so I gave him a very logical answer. And so then he went on, and then he finally said, and I might get a little choked up about this. He said, I don't want to ever live here without you. And I said, damn, I said, I love you so much that you will never be without me. And as I said it healed something in me, because if me as his mother loves him that much, my mother loved me that much too.
The mirror.
Yeah.
Right?
And not that our children are responsible for our healing, but listening and answering their questions thoughtfully, especially if they're watching us walk through grief, I think can help us understand how we are all still connected despite that separation.
Well, and they remind us of our capacity to love, beyond borders or measures or realms, I think about, that's the other piece of grieving as a mother, is I have so much pain around one day not being here with them too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, what have I done to myself? Here I've kind of like moved through, I've lost Nanny, and And then how and then I start seeing pictures, and it's just sometimes it feels like it is too much. And then that's where we are being asked to really come back to center and being held by that love at center point within the heart space.
Yeah.
And that is where that acceptance comes in. But it's children are our mirrors, and they're our teachers. And then so too, you're guiding,
Yeah. But if I can give that message to him, that message applies to me too as the child.
Absolutely. And I think so much of this is reparenting ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of, a lot of it of the sessions is, once I do a big swath of healing and get somebody kind of flowing again, how do we love ourselves? How do we coach ourselves? How do we reparent ourselves? And how do we utilize our children, our colleagues, all as stimuli for our growth? It's all working for us, not to us,
Right. And not only reparenting, but when you don't have a parent available, how do you parent yourself now? Because we're all just kids trying to figure this out.
Exactly.
Play and make believe, I'm convinced.
Exactly.
Nobody actually knows how to call IT and get the cell phone turned off. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No.
So yeah, just figuring out who's the person who can help parent me in this situation, whether it's my girlfriend or my husband or a good friend that's going to make me laugh at the ridiculousness of life or whatever. So favorite quote that you love, it can be a swear word, something you say all the time that's just your kind of go-to Kaley catchphrase.
All right. This came through in a channeling in a client session, and I just loved it so much because it brought so much peace. But come what may, here I am, surrendered in my heart space. Or here I am, come what may, here I am, sweetly surrendered.
I love that.
Connected to all that is. There's versions of it, but it's come what may. So I'm strong enough to be able to hold anything. Come what may, you will find me here. Sweetly surrendered.
Yeah, I love that.
And there's versions of that, but there's just this amazing benevolent energy that comes through. And as we allow ourselves to know that we're strong enough to withstand anything, and that ultimately everything will be okay. That's the other piece that seems so simple, but this idea that everything will be okay.
Yeah, I love that. So tell people how they can connect with you. And I know that you do help people virtually too. I'm so fortunate that you are here in Atlanta, as I ask. But for people who are listening that they can't get to you in Atlanta, how can they find you?
So I have a website. It's kaleydecker.com. So KaleyDecker. And on that website, this is another thing you can do. If you sign up for my newsletter, you will get a free meditation. So it's a cleansing meditation. It'll kind of help you. It'll be something you could utilize this week. So I just invite you to go there. I have one-on-one sessions. I do packages, and I'm starting this monthly live healing that's going to be virtual called The Meadow. I'm really excited about it. I used to do something similar, but it's a group experience where you can be in this frequency of healing and of just being human in this way. And so I just invite you to look that up on my website as well. And if you are in the corporate world, I love partnering with brands to be able to bring this type of wellness and just intentional way of being to the workplace.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
I know
you.
that everybody who is listening is walking away with new ideas and some new tools. And I just know that my DMs are going to blow up because people are going to feel like you are speaking directly to them. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for holding this space. And I'm so proud of you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, that's it for today. Grief and growth sit at the table, passing notes when we're not looking. This tea, this time is part of your healing, and it's part of mine too. You're not broken. You're just brewing. And besties, we do not gatekeep around here. If you heard something that touched your heart, if you thought of a friend and said, my friend needs to hear this, send this episode to them. Follow, share, and come back next Tuesday. Your seat at the table will be waiting. Follow along on Instagram at How Do I Do This Pod and on YouTube at How Do I Do This Pod. DM me on Instagram and tell me what kind of grief you're holding right now. Seriously, I'll read every one and will probably be the person to respond back. Tell me what you have tried that you think might help me. I'm open to trying anything that's not illegal. Your story might find its way into one of our future episodes.